Landlords in California are using renovictions to get around state law that makes it almost impossible to raise rents and makes it very difficult to evict tenants. But tenants are claiming that landlords are doing them wrong. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting story for you today, and it's coming out of the state of California. So, as I've mentioned many times before, California has some of the most strict anti landlord laws in the entire country. Okay, they want to make it almost impossible for you to evict people. They want to make it almost impossible for you to be able to raise rents. They actually have a statewide rent control law that's in place, and some local jurisdictions even go further than the statewide rent control and make it darn near impossible for landlords to be able to recover the cost of repairs, etc. Right? So, what are landlords doing? They're looking for the loopholes in these laws that will allow them to actually be able to operate their businesses. Now, my suggestion is just to get out of the state altogether because things are only going to get worse. But for those who decide to stay, if they know the law, they can make a ton of money. And that's why a lot of landlords are sticking around. Okay. So they're going in there, they're using what's called a renoviction. And what that means is there's a loophole within their just cause eviction law and within their rent control laws that allows a landlord to actually evict the tenant if they're going to be making substantial repairs. And then after that tenant is evicted, they're able to bring the rent up to market rates. Okay, so it can work out pretty well for a landlord, but there's also laws in a lot of places that say, hey, that you have to pay these tenants, to leave. So it can be one of those things where if you don't do your numbers correct, you can still end up losing a lot of money. But there's the potential, and in the story I'm going to cover today, you'll see just how much higher the rents are than what the previous tenants were paying, and exactly why the landlord felt that they needed to get those tenants up out of there. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So do you think that, let's say you're a landlord in California, or maybe you are a landlord in California right now. Have you considered using this renoviction procedure in order to get around the state laws and get rid of some of your tenants? Okay. And I'm just curious for the California landlords. I know if I was investing there, this would be my strategy. Okay, I would buy properties with the intention of evicting the tenants and repairing those properties, bringing them up to market rate rents, and putting other tenants in there. I would do that. That would be my whole strategy. In fact, it's very similar to the strategy I use right now, not in California, because I use the Burr method, which is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. Okay. So when I buy a property in general, I will rehab it before I even get tenants in there, or I will wait till the tenant's lease ends and then I will renovate their unit and then get new tenants in there at the higher rate of rent. So it's really not much different than the strategy that you would use whether you're in California or not. The problem is though that these tenants, they feel so entitled. They feel entitled to keeping their rents low. They feel entitled to your unit, the one that you own and that you spent millions of dollars on in some cases, right? And they don't want you to be able to do anything to it. They would rather the property be dilapidated in horrible shape forever as long as they get to keep their cheap rent, because that's the sense of entitlement they have. So anyway, let me get into this article. This article is coming from thesun.com, and it says, notice to vacate. Couple evicted from home of over 20 years after new property owner found loophole, and it could happen to you. Yeah, and it could happen to you. If the property owner, no matter where you live, if the property owner decides that, hey, I want to get completely out of the rental business, or if they say, hey, I want to completely rehab this property that you're living in, they can wait till your lease expires, or they could move to evict you before that even in order to make this happen. So you see that you're never protected when you're a renter. Never. Okay, you're never protected as a homeowner either, but you have a little bit more security. That's why I suggest to everybody, hey, if possible, work on buying your own home. You have a little bit more security. It's a lot more difficult to remove you from the property. And if you want somewhere long term to stay that's stable, the best option is to purchase a home. Now, for these people who have been paying low rent for 20 years in this article, I'm sure they thought they could, just live on this cash cow forever. And that just wasn't the case. They should have been saving up their money with the expectation of, hey, this cheap rent is going to end at some point in time. We should be prepared. But they didn't do that. Okay. So, anyway, let's get into it. A California couple was forced out of their home, not their home, actually the landlord's home, was forced out of the home where they had lived for 20 years due to so called renovictions that have supposedly been sweeping across the state. In December of 2022, San Luis Obispo residents Lynn and Carrie were evicted from their apartment they had been renting for 2 decades, according to a report from the Tribune. The couple, who declined to give the outlet their real names due to privacy concerns, had been renting the place from the same landlord until late last year. It was only 1 month after the new owner closed escrow on the fourplex property that they were served eviction papers. At the time, the couple claimed the new building owner declined to speak with them, allegedly giving them no chance to offer to pay more rent to stay in the apartment. That's because the new owner wanted to do full renovations of the building, probably. Okay, that's what I would have wanted to do. And yeah, you could offer to pay a little bit more, but if I'm able to get significantly more, like more than double the amount that you're paying for rent by doing these renovations, well, there's no amount more that you're not going to come up and be like, yes, I will pay you double. No, I've never heard that. You might pay $100 or $200 a month more. Yeah, that'll be your offer, but that wouldn't be worth it to me to have invested hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars into purchasing this new building. Okay. That's what a lot of these tenants don't understand. Okay. When a new owner comes in, they are buying the property at today's price. So your previous owner, who had owned it for 20 years, you had rented from the same owner for 20 years, they purchased the property at the price it was 20 years ago. So in California, a place that you bought 20 years ago, let's say you bought a place for 300 grand 20 years ago. Well, that place is now worth $1 million. Okay, so the new owner, when they purchase the place, they have to get a loan for the $1 million, or for 80% of the $1 million, for $800,000, and that loan is going to cost significantly more than what the loan your previous landlord had on the property when they purchased it at $300,000. So the rent you were paying to your previous landlord was fine. The rent you're paying to the new landlord has to be much, much higher to cover their costs. That's why when a new landlord purchases a property, they have to raise the rent in a lot of cases. Okay, that is why. And I know it's unfortunate, but you should have expected that, hey, this is not our permanent home. We will have to move on at some point in time. So stop being all entitled. The couple was reportedly served the eviction papers due to alleged poor conditions of the apartment, the property owner claimed. The tenants had proven to be poor stewards of the property for the previous owner, which automatically excluded them from selection upon completion, the owner said to the Tribune in an email shared by Haven Properties owner Gavin Payne, which manages the fourplex. The owner claimed that the apartment was in disrepair due to deferred maintenance by the previous owner and misuse by the existing tenants. And that's probably true. 20 years these people were up in there. You can't tell me there wasn't deferred maintenance, okay? They probably were just begging to not get kicked out by the previous landlord, so they didn't make too many complaints about major stuff that needed to be repaired. And after 20 years, every single property you own will have major repairs that need to be done. That is the truth. Okay, after 5 years, I've had major repairs at every single property I've owned. So you can't tell me that there aren't major repairs for people who've been living in this place for 20 years. They think that for some reason that, oh, yeah, this landlord is screwing us over. That's just not the case, okay? The truth of the matter is that, hey, you've been in this place for a very, very long time. The new owner of the property needs to come in there and make repairs. And they actually detail some of the repairs here in the article. As for the alleged repairs, the current owner alleged that he needed to spend approximately $200,000 over the course of 5 to 6 months to remove asbestos from the apartment's ceiling. The repairs also reportedly included gutting out the kitchen and bathrooms, changing windows, removing an electric heat source, and installing a new heating system and ducting, the Tribune reported. And we're talking about a fourplex, okay? So when they say this stuff, they're probably talking about doing those renovations for the entire building, not just for this particular tenant's unit, okay? So if there is asbestos in the ceiling, it's in the all four units. So they had to remove all of the tenants from the building in order to do the asbestos remediation. Also, like they said, they were doing the kitchen and bathrooms and changing out windows. You're like, yeah, that's going to take a lot of work. That's going to cost a lot of money. I've paid people to change out my windows. I've paid for new HVAC systems. I've paid for asbestos removal. These are not cheap things, and they're even more expensive in a place like California, where they have more regulations and more laws that you must comply with than they do in the places where I invest, like in Missouri and in Nebraska. Okay, and I've even invested in Arizona, and it's still going to be more expensive than that. So yes, you're going to have to remove these tenants in order to do that sort of work. That sort of work is very extensive. Not to mention, like they're not mentioning all the stuff that might be additional on top of that. So to say a fourplex with $200,000 worth of work needed, $50,000 per unit, the place is, a lot of deferred maintenance on the inside. It's within reason. Okay, it is within reason, and especially in a place like California, where you can get rents high enough to be able to cover the cost of this sort of renovation. So yes, this doesn't sound like it's fake or a lie or something that the landlord was making up just so they can go in there and just paint and then throw in new carpet. No, this is some major work. The former owner of the fourplex told the outlet that the new owners are a really decent people. Honestly, they didn't take advantage of anybody. They did what was necessary. Ultimately, the apartment was listed for rent at approximately $3,500, said the couple, who allegedly only paid $1,500 when they were in the apartment. So there you go, right there. The couple, when they were living in the apartment, was paying $1,500 a month rent. Now it's listed for $3,500 a month. That's more than double. Okay, double would be $3,000 a month. We're getting $2,000 more a month for rent. Right now, imagine that times 4 units. Right, you're getting $8,000 a month higher than what the previous tenants in this building were paying. So the previous tenants, let's say that all 4 units were renting out for $1,500 a month, right? All combined, they were only paying $6,000 a month, and now you've got them, paying $14,000 a month. So yes, $200,000 rehab of the place. Yeah, that would, the numbers make sense. The numbers make sense. It would be a good deal for the landlord if the landlord, after the renovations are done, goes back and refinances. They could probably get all of the $200,000 that they invested back out through a cash out refinance. So this would be a very good burr, one of the things that I like to do. And, I don't know what they paid for it, but, if it was a lot of deferred maintenance, I'm assuming that they paid below what the market is, what the market cost of this property would be. Now, that ain't going to be cheap even in California, but if they did their numbers correctly, I'm sure that the new owner, is going to make some money off of this. And, the previous owner's like, hey, they followed the law. They did everything correctly. And it's good that the previous owner isn't talking any garbage on the new owners, because the previous owner does the exact same thing. If you're a landlord, you understand why landlords do things. And these tenants, yeah, I feel bad because, they will have to find somewhere new to live, but that is their problem. That is not the landlord's fault. And this is just a normal part of the rental cycle everywhere else except for in California. So, yeah, would you use a renoviction in California in order to get these low paying tenants up out of your unit? I would.